This narrated set of notes serves as an introduction to the highlights for Week 2 topics, focusing on formulas and functions. So here are some important takeaways for Module 2. Since the rest of the topics should be review from your prerequisite courses, we will focus on those topics that are likely new to you. Making workbooks user-friendly, what-if analysis, logical functions, and lookup functions. Here are the major learning objectives for Module 3, performing calculations with formulas and functions. The highlighted topics may be new to you and are featured in these notes. After reading the Wingate Farm case study, review the visual overview in your text. You can skim those topics you are already confident with, but don't skip anything. Many times we get so caught up in our work and getting the job done that we forget about the importance of documenting our work. So we want to make our workbooks user-friendly. This is really important. There may be many users who use our workbook, so we want to be sure they understand the content. An explanatory worksheet can be added that covers industry jargon, what is being calculated and why, and also how, and describes how the equations are used to make those calculations. We also may need to do some formatting and use different styles to highlight different cell content. In professional settings, it is likely that many users will be using the workbook. So it is very important to clearly identify the contents. When I worked in industry, the progress of our projects and the developers' hours spent were tracked using workbooks. Everyone on the team had access to it and was responsible for updating the workbook. This allowed our project manager to keep track of the progress and our hours on task. Using Excel functions. This is a quick way to calculate summary data. Every function follows a set of rules, also known as the syntax. These specify how the function should be written. Here we see the general syntax for all Excel functions. The square brackets indicate optional arguments. An argument can be any type of value, including text, numbers, cell references, or even other formulas or functions. Functions can be placed inside other functions. This is called nesting. And if so, they have to be fully contained within a set of parentheses. Here are some commonly used functions. You should review these in your textbook. You'll find them on page 142 in figure 3-46. On the Formula tab in the Function Library group, you'll find a list of 13 different types of categories for functions that are built into Excel. Here is the list. Performing what-if analysis. A what-if analysis lets you explore the impact that changing input values will have on a calculated value in the workbook. One way to perform a what-if analysis is by changing one or more of the input values to see how that affects the calculated results. A trial and error method requires some guesswork as you estimate which values to change and by how much. GoalSeek automates the trial and error method. An error value indicates that some part of a formula is preventing Excel from returning a calculated value. You can expect to see these every now and again when you're working with formulas and functions. So it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with some of these and probably dog-ear the page. Once completing Section 1, review the visual overview for Section 2. If you are comfortable with the autofill feature, you can skim through that content. Regardless, I'm going to review here that autofill provides a quick way to enter content and formatting in cells based on existing entries that are in adjacent cells. The key word here is adjacent. You can use the autofill after you select a range. You need to get the small black cross in the lower right-hand corner in order to use autofill. Then drag across or down the cells you wish to automatically fill. When a formula includes a cell reference, Excel interprets it as being located relative to the position of the current cell. So a fixed reference is one that always references the exact same cell, no matter where it is moved. This is also called an absolute reference. You will notice that when you use the autofill, it automatically updates for the column or row it's in. Sometimes this is not the way we want to work. For instance, if we're doing an average and we need to divide by a certain cell reference. In that case, we will need to use the fixed cell reference. A mixed reference contains both relative and absolute references. You can hold either the row or just the column to be fixed. When you're working with logical functions, we can build decision-making capability into a formula. It works with statements that are either true or false. Excel supports many different logical functions, including the if. This is based on returning one value if a condition is true, and then returning a different value if the condition is false. So based on the logical test, in this example, if cell B7 contents are greater than absolute reference cell H5, return or enter yes into this cell. Otherwise, no. Make a note, do not embed a space between the if and the parenthesis. Otherwise, you will get an error in your formula. Comparisons are also known as relational operators. You should be familiar with these from mathematics. These are used to compare a relationship between two entities or values. So there will be one item on the left of the operator and one item on the right side of the operator. If you need to perform something more complicated, like comparing three cells, then you need to write two expressions, one comparing the first two, and then a second expression connected with an and that compares the second and the third. We will see more of this in later chapters. Using lookup functions. An exact match lookup is when the lookup value must match one of the comparison values in the first column of the lookup table. The lookup table organizes numbers or text into categories. So the syntax for lookup is as follows. VLOOKUP, whatever the value is, then a reference to the table array, the column index number, and possibly a range lookup. If you have any questions or wish to discuss any of these features, post to the Week 2 forum.